Welcome back, everyone. This is J7Jace, bringing you yet again another Final Fantasy Tactics video. But this time, I'm ranking all of the bosses in FFT, and I'm going to be factoring in things like difficulty, quality, overall design, and how relevant or influential they are to the story. With all that being said, let's get started. Now, Maluda, even though she's just a typical knight, I do think the battles are hard, especially for first-timers. You know, the thieves and white mages at the Brigand's Den can be annoying. She also hits pretty hard, and in the second encounter with her at Linalian Plateau, the female knights, the male black mages, and that one female time mage can be problematic. And I do like the optional dialogue and all the extra things you can see with her. And you do have to KO her completely to win these battles, and I do think she paved the way and really opened the player's eyes to, you know, what goes on behind the scenes of, or, you know, the politics between the lower and upper class, especially how, you know, the Corpse Brigade pretty much denied their pay during their service to the 50-year war. So, you know, they fought, bled, and died, and they pretty much got nothing. So I do think she really opened our eyes, especially Ramza, that as well, even Delita. So I do think she is a great boss overall. Now next, her brother Wiegraf. Now he's the first one we also encounter that he has unique abilities as well. You know, his Stasis Sword, Judgment Blade, Cleansing Strike, Split Punch, you know, Northwind Strike, all of that. He can be a hard fight, but you don't have to KO him completely. And, you know, the female monks, the female knights, Boko can be annoying. And story as well, you know, he opens our eyes. You know, we think Zalbag, Dystarg, and even Log are these wonderful noblemen, but he says something, and, you know, Ramza at first says, oh, my brothers aren't that way, but I feel like Wiegraf is also another fantastic character. The hard fight, story's awesome, and just the design, the music of this battle, I think really set and make story of FFT so great. And we're also going to go back to him because we encounter him later on in the game as well. Now, Argath, in terms of difficulty, it's a hard fight, not because of him, but because of the female black mages and the knights. We also are limited in our deployment because, you know, Delita, and the same thing can be said about several of these fights as well. But in terms of story, I'm gonna have to give him D, because like the Beowulf, the Northern Sky make this guy a officer or commander of a unit when he hasn't proven himself at all. He's pretty much a squire, the lowest of the low, or Knight's Apprentice to Elmdor. And, you know, he kills Tetra. Like, I don't see how he's given this position, and even though he kind of awakens Delita and even Ramza in a way, like, he's really easily forgotten. So there's that. Next, we're moving on to Chapter 2. Really not many boss fights here. Like with Gafgarian, he really isn't a boss fight because a lot of these battles are defeat all enemies, not necessarily him. But to me, he is just so iconic, and a lot of people consider him a boss fight. But to me, I'm gonna put him in the GOAT category. You know, the betrayal at Zurchill Falls, the execution site or the gallows, and lastly, the duel at Lionel Castle. Well, it can be a duel. You know, I'm not going to go too many details into how to tackle that fight, but they were really good, difficult spikes. There was a lot of good dialogue, the story, like the overall design and quality of it. Like, Gafgarian is goated, and, you know, his abilities are awesome. They're hard. To me, he's like the perfect encounter, even though he's not technically a boss. Now, the fight with the Cardinal, or the beginning of the Zodiac Braves, Lucavi, I think this fight is pretty solid. I don't like how it's like a soft lock, but you know, the Nightmare, his damage, he's fast. I do think, you know, in the music as well, I think he was a great opener to, you know, what we're gonna face, or like, you know, see in the future. And that really just shocked us. Like, you know, this holy man uses the Zodiac Stone of Legend. I think he's a very, very solid boss fight. So I'm gonna put this in A. Now, Zalmor, I thought was kind of weird. He just comes out of nowhere from the church, like he hunts heretics. Like, I thought in the tavern or the bar, no one really saw Ramza. You know, they just kind of know about him. You know what I mean? But, and also his fight at Zeltenia Castle, I'm just going to include both of the encounters with him. Again, kind of weird. You know, they find Ramza at the church with Delita. That fight is also incredibly easy as well. I do like the optional dialogue, but to me, he's just very easily forgotten. I'm gonna put him in D tier with Argath. Like, if he wasn't in the game, I don't really see a purpose. Now, he is mentioned by Isolde if you prolong the battle a bit. Now, Isolde, I think, is an amazing boss fight as well. You know, his jump, the overall difficulty of the battle, you know, you're gonna have to adjust your movement abilities. Well, you don't have to, but I do like the music Under the Stars a lot here. He hits hard. He has that concentration, safeguard. His jump is awesome. I think I wish we encountered him more, you know what I mean? I like the boss fight a lot. I'm gonna put him in S. I wish we got more of Isolde later. You know, he redeems himself at Riovane's castle, you know, with his father, quote unquote. So I do like that. I do think that fight is very, very memorable, very well designed. You know, the other enemies like the archers, the summoner, and the knights can also be problematic as well. So just the overall story difficulty design, he is great. Now, Wiegraf again, I'm just gonna include the encounter at Orban as well as Riovane's here. Now, to me, he's goated. Like, in War of the Lions, the story connects really well on how he wants to join the church to have revenge on, you know, Ramza for killing Maluda. He wants more power because the Corpse Brigade's pretty much wiped out at this point. And, you know, Hollowed Bolt or Lightning Stab, you know, this battle is so memorable in FFT. It's also infamous. Now, maybe because I didn't get soft locked here, I'm going to be a little biased, but, you know, everyone remembers and talks about this fight if you played Final Fantasy Tactics. Even at Orban, you could get soft locked. You know, there are ways to cheese the fight, like Chameleon Robe and using Tailwind or Yell, but that fight is just so memorable. And we're going to get to the second phase later. Now, Merrick, he's not really a boss here. I think he was kind of a letdown. Like, the first time you encounter him, you know, you see his Hell skill or Nether Mantra. It doesn't do a lot of damage. Like, all the other side enemies are tougher than him. And even after the dialogue with Rafa saying that they have these special abilities, like in lore and canon-wise, this guy's a beast, but I gotta factor in, like, overall design, gameplay. I think he's one of the worst bosses in the game, or he's not even a boss, but I'm just including him here because some people will think he is. So to me, he's just a D. His encounters aren't really memorable. Now, Belius or Vilius, GOAT. You know, just as you think, you know, you got done with Wiegraf, you know, you face this guy and his Archaeo or Archaic demons, and they can just blow you up completely. He has like 1,000 HP. Like, if you don't, like, this is gonna be your soft lock. Very memorable as well. So again, goated fight, amazing. Now, Elmdor and Celia and Letty, I'm gonna kind of include all together and factor in, you know, their rooftop fight at Riovane's, their encounters at Limbury Castle and whatnot. So to me, Elmdor, I wish he had more unique abilities, like, sword skills. I mean, he's clearly based off of Sephiroth. Just looking at him, he has the Masamune and whatnot. He comes back from the dead, similar to Sephiroth, right? It's thrown off the Mako reactor. And the Genji armor, which sadly they took out in the War of the Lions remaster of the game. So to me, I'm going to put Elmdor in S. He's very memorable, but I do wish he had more unique abilities, as I said. Now, Celia and Letty, I wish they had more backstory about who they are. Like, even if you go into their chronicler Brave story, they just say, young woman accompanying Elmdor, and later on that they were Ultimate Demons. I do wish they had more of that, but in terms of actual design and how difficult they are some of the most deadly enemies in the game. You know what I mean? Instant KO, stop, charm, all that. Dual wield, insane jump stat, and they're female. Very, very deadly. To me, some people argue these are more deadly than a lot of the Lucavi, so to me they're up there in boss fights. And you get to learn Ultima from them, which is the most disappointing ability. Now, I'm kind of skipping around, but Melidel here, very memorable, especially, you only encounter her once at Brevenia. But to me, very annoying boss fight, very memorable, because, she's going to break your equipment with her Unyielding Blade or Mighty Sword. To me, she's an S. That fight is a pain. The archers are up top, there's a ninja, there's summoners, and she also has the Defender and Chantage, so items you can steal early. I do think her boss fight is great. Now, Barrack, I'm just going to include the one at the desert and the one at Orban at the end. So to me, he's a missed opportunity. Like, he's hard. I think both of those fights are hard, especially for first timers, especially at the end. I just wish he had, some extra dialogue with Mustadio and all that. He just, to me, kind of appears out of nowhere, but I do like the difficulty of the second encounter, and he has the blaster, the Tiamats and all that. I'm gonna put him in A, more so that second battle, just how difficult it is, and it's because of him and the church that the Northern Sky, is their offensive or their assault on Fort Besala was weakened. So yeah, I'm gonna put him in A. That second fight at Orban, very, very overlooked in terms of difficulty. Now, Argath, Death Knight Argath. So you can face him again on War of the Lions. He's a boss fight. He has, the same abilities as Gafgarian, built-in defense boost. His critical recover HP can be annoying as well. So this fight can be difficult, but in terms of story, I really don't like it. Pretty much has the same armor as Ramza in Chapter 2 and 3. Kind of looks like a reused skin. And I kind of wish he was just one and done, you know what I mean? But they do bring him back. I'm going to put this in C just because he's more formidable this time as opposed to how he was in Chapter 1. And we see that even after death, he, didn't learn his lesson. He's still, terrible person. So I'm going to put him in C just based on that gameplay difficulty. Now, Zalera, the Death Seraph, or like the angel form. I'm really disappointed with this one. Like, in terms of, bellies to Zalera, the difficulty, nowhere near as hard. Melidel joins you. There's a bunch of undead enemies here. To me, I wish the boss fight was harder. So, there is that. Now, Clishan or Clishen, if you're on War of the Lions, he does have a much better intro, and you're most likely going to encounter him at Dorter. I'm also going to include or factor in his fights at Malone, and also at one of the final stages at Orban. So based on his bio, the guy graduated with honors. He's, one of the best mages in Ivalice, but, not very threatening as an enemy. I'm going to put him in D. Like, he's a handsome guy. He looks like he's smiling here. But his overall design and difficulty, like, there was so much more they could have done with him. You know what I mean? He's a member of the church. He's one of the best wizards, but just a letdown, in my opinion. But you gotta love that sound of Dark Holy or Unholy Darkness. Now, Dice Dark here, he's pretty much like Orlando. I do wish they made him stronger in terms of, you know, damage as well. That Rune or Loon Knight. He does have a built-in defense boost. You know, he can break your stuff. But to me, he's just a B. You know what I mean? Like, I expected more from, like, you know, the eldest son of the Bayo family, in my opinion. Now, Adramelech as well. I'm going to put him in C. Like, he represents Capricorn, right? I wish he was a bit faster, like, and harder as a boss fight. But it's just kind of a letdown, you know? You would expect something harder, you know, especially in the later parts of the game and, you know, the Bayo family. But to me, it's just a C. They could have done a lot better with that, in my opinion. Now, Fulmarv or Vormov, he's a Divine Knight like Melidel. We really don't get to see enough of him, like the fight with him, Clishan, and Lofri, when all three of them are together. It's the only time you really face him. You don't face him in his normal form again. If supposedly they were supposed to have a 1v1 with him, or we were supposed to have a 1v1 with him before he transforms. But to me, he's just C. You know, he's like the leader of the Knights Templar. I expected a lot more from him. So I want to put him in C. If there was a 1v1 and that was epic, I'd probably lift him up a bit. But again, very disappointing. This guy's like the mastermind of everything, and we only encounter him once and he just runs away once he's in critical. Kind of weird. Lofri as well. I do wish, you know, he's kind of like Volmarv's right-hand guy. You know what I mean? He's up there. He's one of the highest ranking members of the church. But yeah, again, just disappointing. See, I mean, his fight at Orban can be tough because, you know, he has Save the Queen and defense boost. Those stack. So that fight can be a little difficult and longer. But yeah, I'm just gonna put him at C. I did expect more from him as well. And for Zombag or Zalbag, I just thought kind of bringing him back, like, in that fight was just kind of weird. Like, he isn't really that hard. I feel like the demons, I mean, now if you're doing an SSCC, he can be really, really tough, and the Bloodsuck can throw you off. But yeah, very disappointed with how they just brought him back for one thing, and Ram just like Zalbag, save Alma. To me, he's like a D-tier fight, in my opinion. I like him as a character, but as a boss fight, not really that good, in my opinion. There we go, Hashmal, or Fulmarv's Dukabi. I'm gonna put him in C. You know, I do think he's better than, like, Adramelech, Solera, but his sending off, you know, he kind of just comes and goes so fast. Really not memorable at all. You know, he commits Sudoku, you know, he kills himself. That helps summon Ultima. Like, not that hard of a fight. And yeah, he's just very easily forgotten, you know. Ultima, I do like the music. I do think it's more memorable. I'm gonna put her in B. And, like, you know, the Ultima demons and whatnot. Like, she looks, you know, good as well. But in terms of, like, overall difficulty and design, it's all right. You know, I mean, it can be a hard I mean, it's actually one of the easiest or easier boss battles I've had. And then the second phase as well, again, I think it's just kind of stale, you know, just average at best. Easy. And yeah, the footage of me is going to be like Balthier one-shotting second form of Ultima. Like, it just kind of just talks about, you know, a descendant of Ramza. Like, it's kind of a disappointing boss fight. Like, I feel like earlier in the game, the boss fights were just like next level, out of this world, and towards the end game, it kind of declined a bit in terms of storytelling, in my opinion. Now, Construct 7, even though it's an optional boss fight, like the enemies, you know, the cockatrices and whatnot, the items you can get, Noveska Temple, you know, Escutcheon 2, I do think that's a very cool boss fight, and it can be a hard one. You know, he comes back, he hits hard. Awesome side quest. So I'm gonna put this in A. It's a challenging battle, especially if you want to get all that stuff. So very memorable. A. Now Teo, you can only do this in Rendezvous. It's just kind of mediocre in my opinion. It's just a black chocobo with a lot of HP. I wish it was faster. I'm gonna put this in C. It's just, you know, Arguay Woods. Yeah, like the overall design, I think, of that Rendezvous wasn't the best. So there's that. Aliste as well. He is like Beowulf, you know, he's a Templar or Temple Knight. He has Safeguard, you can't steal his equipment. He easily comes and goes, you know what I mean? But his design, you know, Beowulf can't get KO'd. Beowulf is a guess in that battle. I do like it. It's a cool side quest. So I'm gonna put that in A. Like, there's some back and forth dialogue. Like, there's development here. You know what I mean? Between him, Beowulf, and his time being a Knight of Lionel. You know, he was like the captain of the Lionel cards. So I do like how there's more story. It's not that difficult, but I'm really factoring in story here. Now, Bremon, Lionel's new Liege Lord, he was actually mentioned in the original Final Fantasy Tactics, and, you know, they expanded on this in War of the Lions, which was really awesome. And there are some good items to steal here. You know, we go back to, you know, Lionel. So, but him as a boss fight, he's kind of weak. You know, he's like Zalmor. I'm gonna put him in B, just kind of standard. Make sure you steal like the Masamune from that samurai, and you're pretty much good to go. And the Dark Dragon is slow. He has a ton of HP, but it is a cool sprite. But again, not that memorable of a fight. So this one kind of drags on a bit. I'm gonna put him in B. Nothing really to steal from him because he has Safeguard. Like, I wish you could take that Lordly Robe from him, but you know, you can get more Lordly Robes or infinite ones from Rendezvous, steal it from Balmufra at the end. And last but not least, we have the super boss of the game, Elidibus, the last floor of Deep Dungeon. So I like how you can learn Zodiac or Zodiark. That's really cool. He's mysterious. You know, he was that kind of forgotten hero of the 50-Year War, you know, the mage. And his name is mentioned at Gorlin, you know, so he's, I feel like one of the few secret bosses that, you know, you see his name quite early. But that fight, to me, he's just too slow. You know what I mean? I do wish it was like ruby weapon, emerald weapon, kind of hard or difficulty. But yeah, I mean, I do think he's cool, and it was mysterious. You have to go through all that. Zodiark is unique, and it's like the only chance you can ever learn it. So actually, I'm gonna put him in B. I feel like, you know, coming from Final Fantasy VII or like other super bosses of Final Fantasy Tactics, like I do wish he made like references to, you know, like Ramza looking like his father, Barbaneth, and all of that. He's not that difficult. He's slow, and it's the only chance you can learn Zodiark. And I wish that spell, you know, was a bit faster or more devastating. You know what I mean? Like, why use Zodiark when you can use Hallowed Bolt, right? So again, this was my tier list of all the bosses in Final Fantasy Tactics, or at least I think I got all the bosses. So again, let me know what you think in terms of my ranking, or how you would rank these fights and boss battles. And I hope you enjoyed the video. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I wish you the best when it comes to your health, wealth, and happiness. As always, take care, and I'll see you all next time.